Welcome back everyone to another episode of This Week in Comics. My name is Yule and I'm going to run down comics I'm looking forward to, ones that I've read, and we're going to talk about the top 5 books that we sold at Fantastic Comics last week. So let's get on with it. You're probably going to recognize a few of these books. Coming in at number 5, we have Justice League number 4. Settling in at number 4, we have Gideon Falls number 5. There hasn't been a month where it wasn't in our top 5. Coming in at number 3 this week, we have Star Wars number 51. This continues the exploits of our favorite Star Wars characters. You know, the ones after A New Hope. Coming in at number 2, we have the runner-up book of the week, Avengers number 5. I read this book, I liked it, I'm going to review it later in the show. And at number 1, the top spot is, say it with me everyone, Batman. This is issue number 51, the first issue following the wedding. I will be reviewing this one also. Alright everyone, let's talk about some books that I read this week. First up this week we have Batman number 51. This is the beginning of a brand new story arc called Cold Days. It's written by series author Tom King, and a new artist for the series, Lee Weeks, is doing the illustrations for this story. This is a courtroom drama that sees Mr. Freeze on trial for murder. Bruce Wayne, spoilers, he's Batman, is in the jury and he's listening to the case. And Mr. Freeze is like, hey man, I didn't do this. And of course we see some flashbacks of Batman just capturing Mr. Freeze and then beating him up and forcing a confession out of him. And you know, that's what this trial is all about. And yeah, it's fantastic. There's not a lot of superheroing going on in the story. Like I said, most of it is based in the courtroom, which could, under normal circumstances, be a pretty boring talking heads type story. But Lee Weeks is excellent at drawing just normal people doing normal things. I mean, he can make people sitting in a chair look exciting. And he does really cool angles, and he really brings you as a reader into the story. He really engages you, and I like his stuff quite a bit. The story is not boring in any way. It's just the lack of superheroing that on first look might not make you think that this is such a good book, but it is. I really liked it. There's a cliffhanger at the end. Bruce Wayne is involved in that cliffhanger. I don't want to let you know what that is so that you can have a little bit of a surprise. I do highly recommend this issue. I liked it a lot. I'm not the biggest Batman fan, if you don't know, but I give this some pretty high marks and I highly recommend it. Next up we have The Magic Order number 2 by Mark Millar and Olivier Coipel. Simply put, this is a Netflix series. This is every book that Mark Millar does going into the future is contracted to be a Netflix series or movie, theoretically. This is the first book that he is doing since he signed that contract, and I really like it a lot. Simply put, the Magic Order is a family that is trying to prevent and protect humanity from all the weird things that go on in the world. It's a lot like Doctor Strange in that way, except it's a family. And there's one member of them that is, I guess, estranged, that is trying to kill them all off. And she has a whole bunch of people at her bidding making that happen. And so as we're watching this story unfold, people are dying, and it's pretty cool how it happens. The front cover of the new issue is definitely a scene that takes place in the book, which is pretty fantastic. You don't usually see that in comics anymore, or ever actually. So that's kind of a cool thing. And like I said, I really liked it. Cordelia is the main character that we're focusing on in this issue. She has a really cool bit in the very beginning, and I really appreciate the caption dialogue boxes because they're used perfectly, and the punchline to her story in the very beginning really made me laugh. And I highly recommend this issue. Mark Millar is doing a really good job, and Coipel always does good artwork. I'm in this series. It's only 6 issues. For the long haul, if you can call it that, I'm going to read it. I highly recommend you pick it up and check it out yourself if you haven't, or keep reading if you weren't sure if you wanted to keep doing so. Next up we have Weatherman number 2 by Jody LaHoupe and art by Nathan Fox. at the end of the first issue, the Weatherman, our main character, that's his job, got captured by, I guess, space cops, Mars space cops, and was accused of killing like billions of people. In this issue, he's being interrogated, beaten up, interrogated, because he is assumed by these cops to have had a past where he was like a mercenary and was involved, like I said, in all these people's deaths, and they want to get information from him because there's more death that's coming that maybe he can help out with. This issue is primarily an information dump issue. We meet some new characters. Don't worry, they're not going to stick around long. And we get all that stuff about the Weatherman and who he was beforehand. The first issue was more of a character piece where we meet the character, meet the people he's involved with, and then like I said, this one is like hard-hitting information. And that can be really unwieldy for a lot of writers, but I think this one is done well. The art is also a star of the book. It is a good looking book, and there is a cliffhanger at the end of the issue that definitely wants to make me, and should anybody that reads this book, want to read the third issue. So you get a little bit of a payoff when you have to read all these words and everything. Yeah, like I said, it can get unwieldy, and at least you get a little bit of a payoff at the end. I personally am not a big fan of like that super spy trope where the person doesn't know who they are, has a secret. There's going to be that like what's that movie called? Long Kiss Goodbye or whatever, where, oh, there's the knife that falls and I instinctively grab it and look, I'm really cool with things I never knew I was cool with, like killing people. And that's probably going to happen in this book. Like I said, I'm okay with that. I'm not a big fan, but it does work really well in this, and the artwork is enough to make me want to check out the third issue. Like I said, there was a cliffhanger, so that's good. Second issues, if they are worth anything, they will lead into the third issue, and this does a good job for that. So I will be picking it up. I think you should too. Check it out. Last up this week we have Avengers number 5, written by Jason Aaron with art by Ed McGuinness and some other pencilers like Paco Medina filling in also. This story is all about Celestials. Celestials are these big guys from space that basically populated Earth. And they did that like with like the Deviants and Eternals and those kinds of guys. It doesn't really matter because they're coming back and they're gonna wreak havoc. And the Avengers are the only people that can stop them. As a single issue, this isn't necessarily the greatest issue I ever read, but it's part of a whole, and it makes sense if you're reading the entirety of the series. There's a lot of information that is thrown in here, but it's pieced out amongst the storyline. So like in the first issue, we got Avengers from like 1 billion years ago when they killed the very first Celestial, and we get, you know, a lot of other Avengers that aren't hanging around the group right now. There's a big convergence that happens in this one, but until that happens, we're just kind of getting information, little sprinkles of this and that going on, and this issue is kind of the same until they finally all meet up. There are moments that happen that make the Avengers towards the end of the book actually celestial size so that they can go and fight them towards the end. But that's of course going to be the conclusion of the story. I like the Avengers issues, but I think that this story will be a little bit easier to understand if you can read it all in one sitting, or at least, you know, a little bit closer together rather than the 2-week or maybe monthly schedule that this book keeps. I like the Avengers quite a bit. It's very good superheroing. The artwork is excellent. I really like the first 2 pages where we see the first Celestial just bleeding out his blood oil goo, and there's some really cool imagery throughout the book, but those first 2 pages are fantastic. I like this one, like I said, and I recommend you pick it up. If you're a fan of the Avengers or haven't read the Avengers before, you should probably pick it up. You can figure out what's going on because Marvel always puts little what happened previously in the beginning of their comics, so you won't get too lost. Just know that you might not understand everything going in. Just like every week, there's a lot of comics coming out, and these are the ones I think you should most pay attention to. First up this week we have Action Comics 1001 by Brian Michael Bendis and art by Patrick Gleason. Patrick Gleason was the previous illustrator on Superman before Bendis took over. He's excellent. I like his style. He does a really good job. Action is supposed to be more about the Daily Planet side of Superman's life rather than the wife and kid aspect of his life than we saw over in Superman. Man of Steel was a pretty darn good series, although the end was questionable. I didn't really like his Superman, so the shift in tone hopefully will feel different than that book in Action Comics here. So I am looking forward to it, hoping that this Superman is going to be the one I'm going to want to read continuing forward. Check it out. I know I'm going to. Next up, we have Mr. and Mrs. X #1. This is written by Kelly Thompson with art by Oscar Balzadua. I hope I said that right. For those of you that aren't aware, in X-Men Gold #30, Kitty Pryde and Colossus were supposed to get married, but they did not. But there was a wedding between Gambit and Rogue, and this is the series that follows. I assume that they're going for like a spy angle since Gambit's been a thief in the past, and they're doing that whole Mr. and Mrs. X. It's kind of like that Brad Pitt movie with Angelina Jolie. I forget what it was called because I don't watch movies, but I just, remember them. Anyway, I don't know. I'm kind of excited about this. I like Rogue. I like Gambit. I don't know if they were always destined to be together, but it seems like Marvel feels that way, and they gave them their own books, so I'm looking forward to it, at least for the first issue, to see if it's worthwhile. Yeah, if you're a fan of Gambit, Rogue, or maybe the Brad Pitt movie, you should check this one out. Next up, we have a trade paperback coming out called Doom Patrol: The Silver Age, Volume 1. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Doom Patrol, they're basically DC's wacky superhero characters that are involved in maybe darker themes or unique themes. And it was like that back when they first were introduced in the Silver Age, which was like back in the 60s. And if you haven't read any of these Arnold Drake and Bruno Premiani issues, you should probably check these out if you want to know what the X-Men were like before they became the X-Men. I actually never read the old Doom Patrols, and I'm really excited that this book is getting reprinted in a really cool softcover package. I highly recommend you pick it up if you're interested in older superheroes or just what DC's most original superheroes are like. Pick up Doom Patrol. Next up, we have Doomsday Clock #7. This is written by Jeff Johns with art by Gary Frank, and anybody that's been watching this show knows that I've been enjoying this series quite a bit. The artwork is excellent, and I really enjoy the little mysteries that are being sprinkled throughout the story. There's going to be big stuff going on in this book that's going to be big in the DC universe, so anybody that hasn't been reading this probably should get caught up, and anybody that has been reading it and isn't quite sure because of delays when the next issue comes out, it's going to be this Wednesday. So I highly recommend you pick this one up. I'm going to be doing it, so you should too. Last up this week is a book that I give my highest recommendation to in X-Men Grand Design Second Genesis #1. In the first X-Men Grand Design, we saw Ed Piskor take all of the X-Men history from the Kirby and Lee era, the 1960s and whatnot, and he was making them make sense within the Marvel Universe chronologically, just telling the stories so that it makes sense to people that haven't read it, people that have forgotten, or people that just want to relive it. And now, in Second Genesis, we're getting the birth of the new X-Men leading all the way into the Dark Phoenix storyline, and that should take place for most of the second issue in this story arc. The X-Men Grand Designs are 2-issue stories that come out, I guess, about 6 or 7 months apart, and there's going to be one more after this one, but of course this is the Dark Phoenix Second Genesis storyline, if you will, and it is one of Marvel's most well-known and most loved stories, probably in all of comicdom. Everybody remembers it that's ever read it. Most people like it quite a bit, and it's definitely one of the best trade paperback sellers that I sell in the store. And the fact that Piskor is going to be taking that storyline and putting his aesthetic on the paper, the special effects that they use on this. It's just going to be really great, and I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait to see how it comes out, and I think you should be the same. Pick it up. Thank you everybody for tuning into another episode. What'd you think of the show? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you liked the video, please hit that like button. It's the thumbs up thing. And we'll see you next week.